I tell my other friend that I'm on with, I'm like, I got to go right now. Got to go. Talk to you later. Boop. And I click over. I can hear just by the tone of his voice, he's in lawyer mode right now. So I step into the bedroom just to make sure I can hear him clearly. And he says, yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the docket. He's like, and I'm a little confused because I don't understand why I received this notice from the court in your case. And immediately I just feel my heart drop. I'm like, notice? What could you have possibly received from the court at this stage, right?
Today changes my whole entire life. Today changes my whole entire life.
Welcome to Gritability, a podcast about the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and with me in the new studio, is the beautiful and ever radiant Ro Clausen.
Hello. I love this in here. Love the ambiance.
Right?
Yes.
It's got a great vibe. I am digging the backdrop. How cool is this, right? Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about prison flashbacks because some things have happened over the course of the past week that have brought back some not so great memories. And yeah, I guess we're going to talk a little bit about that today and get both of our perspectives because we've been through some stuff.
Yeah.
And although we thought most of this was behind us, not all of it. And I realized with just one phone call, man, it's still there. It's still fresh. And I think I should probably explain.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people can learn a lesson from this one.
So what day was that this week?
Was it yesterday or the day before? Wednesday?
I think it was 2 days ago.
Okay. So it was Wednesday.
Let's say it was on Wednesday, a couple days ago. And early in the morning, right? Going through the normal morning routine. Both of us are working from home. It's a busy morning. There's phone calls. We're both doing things. Our son is running around. And we're very fortunate, right? We're fortunate that we get to work from home, that we get to be together. We get to have our son there. So it's a good vibe. First thing in the morning, things are going smooth. I'm on a great call. Just got some really positive information on, some things that are happening here locally that I was excited about. And I look down and I see on my phone, because I hear somebody calling in my headphones. I look down and I see it's my attorney. And he is the one person that no matter what's going on, I will drop whatever I'm doing and, whatever it is that he needs, because he has always taken my calls. All those years on the inside was always there for me, man. And yeah, he's just one person that we are deeply indebted to. So when I look down, I see his name on the phone. I'm like, oh, I tell my other friend that I'm on with, I'm like, I got to go right now. Got to go. Talk to you later. Boop. And I click over. And I can hear just by the tone of his voice, he's in lawyer mode right now. I'm like, okay. So I step into the bedroom just to make sure I can hear him clearly. And he says, yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the docket. He's like, and I'm a little confused because I don't understand why I received this notice from the court in your case. And immediately I just feel my heart drop. I'm like, notice? What could you have possibly received from the court at this stage, right? Like, what are we talking about? And I'm trying not to jump to any conclusions. And I just take a breath. I'm like, okay, theoretically, like I know logically there's nothing that I should be worried about at this point, but it's still something, right? Something that just grabbed my heart for a second. And I'm like, okay, just listen. And he says, yeah, he goes, I received this thing from Bob Zausmer a reply brief. The court ordered him to reply. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, like Bob Zausmer, that's the U.S. attorney in my case.
Something's up.
Something's going on here. Holy crap. I closed the door to the bedroom. You and CJ were out there. I'm like, I just need to hear whatever he's saying. Like, don't freak out. Don't freak out. And he proceeds to say, yeah, he says the court sent me a notice saying that I missed our chance to reply. At this point, I'm going, holy shit. Okay, where's the suitcase? The drawers are right in front of me. What do we need to pack to get out of the house as quickly as possible? Is somebody coming through this door? Do we have time to get out of here? Where are we going? What's the plan? Like, this is just what's going through my head. And just that quickly, I was taken back to numerous other times where it felt like we had just everything ripped out from under us, where we were so close and things were, just about to happen. And I said, no, this isn't going to happen. So I'm already plotting. I'm already planning. I know that you're in the other room. I'm debating. I'm like, don't say anything to her just yet.
Which is funny because at that point, I didn't know that you had clicked over. I thought you were on the phone with somebody doing like a business, somebody you were meeting later in the afternoon talking about a business deal. So CJ was starting to get loud. And as you walked into the bedroom, I took him outside on the balcony and I heard you say, "What? Tell me the story." And I heard the emotion, but what I thought was something dramatic happened with people you both knew. I had no idea that it was anything nearly as dramatic as it was, nor did I know you had clicked over the phone to Sean. And when you walked out of that bedroom to tell me what had transpired, your face was white like you had seen a ghost. And I could just tell something was very wrong.
Mm. So this conversation between Sean and I goes on for another, I'm going to say 2 or 3 minutes, which when you're holding your breath, that's a very, very long time, right? So for 2 or 3 minutes, Sean is continuing to read from whatever is in front of him and trying to articulate what's going on with this court situation. And finally, I'm just like, listen, dude, bottom line, what's happening here? What's the potential outcome from whatever this is that you're trying to explain to me is happening right now? Because none of this makes sense. I just need you to bottom line it. Like, do I need to pack and leave right now?
Did you say that to him?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, oh, God, no. Oh, my God, I'm so sorry. He's like, no. I should have opened with, this really has no impact on anything. I don't understand why this is happening. Now, when you say that, you're the guy that I trust for all things legal, right? When you tell me I don't understand why this is happening, that does not allay the knot that is in my stomach and my flight at this point response to the situation. You're not helping matters. You're telling me, no, there's no chance, but I don't understand why this is happening.
I'm so grateful it wasn't on speaker because
God.
the two of us, while he was talking, I would have been like booking plane tickets. You would have been packing bags. Like that would not have been good because we would have fed off of each other's anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, but the reality is, like in that moment, it was a reminder of, really, like we could have just walked away from everything. I would have been all right with that.
Well, I almost joked when Sean called back and you put it on speaker. I almost said to him, like, well, thanks for the almost eternal vacation, which I was making light of the situation. But had we not known, like, had that had been the route that we had to go, oh my God, we would have been a frantic mess.
Yeah, that's never the option that we would want to take, right?
But I don't think, sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
I don't think I would have second guessed it. Like, I think in the past we would have been like, maybe if we didn't have CJ or something like that, I think we would have been like, all right, let's sit around and wait and see what we will deal with, what we have to do. And maybe I should preface this to everybody and say, like, none of us have done anything wrong. So it's not like we're running from something that we did it's hanging over us. This was like, this would literally be them just being jerks. And if it was something bad, which it's not, but if it was.
No, not being jerks. Someone being vindictive,
Yeah.
spiteful. And the unfortunate reality is that we have seen too many things. We know all too well about our system, how the way things operate, that man, those things do happen.
Well, look how many people weren't they? I don't remember if they did or didn't, but they were fighting because the government wanted to send all the people who got released on COVID to house arrest
Yep.
back to prison.
Send them all back.
And did it happen?
And they've been home for years.
And there are people that are in our positions have had babies, and
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine.
They did it to Matthew Charles. Matthew Charles he now works at FAM. Matthew Charles was one of the first people released under the First Step Act. And ultimately, there was a judge that returned him to prison. And I believe he was then granted clemency by President Trump and sent back home. But because people were so outraged, they're like, you just sent this guy back to prison for another, he had like 20 years left on his sentence. Something ridiculous, right? They're like, really? This guy's like a pillar of the community. Since he's been home, he's accomplished all these things. He got married, like he's part of his church. He's doing all these things in the community. And you want to send him back to prison? Like, for what? Like, people saw the injustice of that. The problem is we've seen and experienced all these things firsthand, which is why it still seems, when we've done nothing, that it still at times seems plausible that there's still that concern. Whereas like a normal person that's never been through the things we've been through would be like, like it's not even a thought. Like that can't happen. They can't overturn this. They can't change what's already been done. So go ahead.
Well, no, I'm kind of taking us a little bit left, but did you ever watch Sex and the City? The original before you went in? Okay. So there's always a part in Sex and the City, and this is going to be like my Sarah Jessica Parker Carrie moment, where in the middle of the episode, right, she's a writer, and it flashes across the screen and it's her typing. Think like old school computer, her typing. And it would be like the name of the episode and what the episode was about, right? And so this is my Sarah Jessica Parker Carrie moment, where picture the words, right, going across the screen. Will it ever go away? Like, will that anxiety ever go away? Or is this something we're going to live with forever because of where we've been, because of what we've seen, because of the trauma associated with what happened to us and seeing what's happened to other people?
Interesting question. Well, here's the strange thing, because obviously over the last couple of days, and we'll get more into like what's happened since then, and I'll wrap it up and explain what this phone call was really all about. But I do want to follow you down that side path and say, when we first got out, literally within the first week, had a friend come and visit, dropped off some things, was like, man, these are all the things you need. And then said, hey, by the way, like, listen, man, if anything comes up, like, I can help you get passports. I've got money. You guys, like, you'll be good. I'll help you get out of here.
I don't remember this.
It's because he didn't tell it to you. He told it to me.
Oh.
And at the time, it was like, that's ridiculous, man. I was like, you know how hard we've worked to do everything exactly by the book? Like, I'm not doing anything to jeopardize the life that we now have in front of us. And I didn't even give it a second thought. Like, I was like, that would never happen. That was my mindset when we walked out. Like, that's how I was feeling.
And I honestly think that it's not just surrounding this, although this is obviously the most dramatic if you were to go back. But I was just having this conversation with a couple of girlfriends just a few days ago whose husbands have both been incarcerated. They're now since been released, one more recently than the other. But we were saying, like, while you guys are in prison, from our perspective, I just got to get to the day till he's home and everything's going to be magical and perfect and it's everything that I dreamt about. I think we forget that the hard part starts afterwards. It's difficult while you're inside, especially for you and what you have to experience in there. It's a different kind of difficult. Mm-hmm. But I think we were so naive to so many things, just like exactly how you explained in that story.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're like, that hard part's over. Now we're going to live happily ever after.
And it did feel like that. But I would also say that potentially we started on that path where, you're right. Maybe it was naive. Like the expectation was that, man, things are going to be great. We had a plan, like coming out here to start a new life, and the things that we've seen have been shocking, right? Even under normal circumstances.
And I don't want to take away from the fact that things were amazing. And they're still
amazing.
Things
Yeah.
are great. I'd take the struggles and what we've experienced since you've been released, and I'd take that 10 times over versus you being back inside. But I think we were naive to stuff being really difficult and people being really shady.
True. I think the lesson in this, what we've learned along the way, is that we can still choose to live a certain way. But man, you have to be so careful about the people that you choose to let into your circle, because we came out here expecting one thing,
Yeah.
discovered that, people that we thought were one way were a totally different way. And we've had a number of those experiences where it just turned out to be all bad. And, you just got to be more conscious of it. And we are far more conscious of that now, who we allow into that circle. But I don't want to get sidetracked with that. I do want to get back to this phone call with Sean. And ultimately what this call was about was Sean was explaining to me that when prior to my compassionate release motion, the reason why I was ultimately released, granted immediate release from prison, that vehicle, there was another vehicle that was still pending. So normally when you go through the system, the federal appellate system, if you go to trial, few people do, then you have a normal line of appeals where you get to appeal your conviction and your sentence, right? My appeal and conviction in 2005 had made its way through the appellate courts, got to the Supreme Court. In 2005, I received a very thin envelope. Crazy to have all of these court documents that took up all the space in my cell. And then to get this one single page with bold saying denied. That was it. Denied. Like no explanation, no nothing. All of this stuff counts for nothing. Nope, you're done. And it was like, damn. Okay, that's it. That's the end. Now it's extremely hard from that point to get anything reopened. As we've said before, Congress has to change the law, which we know how well Congress gets along and can agree on anything, right? And to get them to change a mandatory minimum, a gun law, and to lessen the amount of time someone would get, that didn't ever seem very likely. And to then get a political figure, another political figure, a president to go soft on a gun crime seemed just very, very unlikely, right? But eventually, Congress did change the law. They said, okay, this one section is excessive. But since they didn't make it retroactive, we didn't have a means to address that. So during that time, I continued to argue the constitutionality, which is the core underlying principle of our federal system, right? The legality of them even bringing these charges. So, and I had written extensively legal arguments. Sean and I had discussed these many times over the years, and I was very fortunate to be with some other guys who spent a lot of time focused on the same aspect of the law, because they too had these crazy sentences like I had, hundreds of years. So we were all personally invested in this, and we spent a lot of time discussing how to attack this, wrote extensively on it, and I always felt very confident in my arguments, right? I'm like, I know this argument is right. This is how the law is supposed to be. But you got to get the courts to agree, right? Before I could get the courts to agree, well, I have this motion in. Sean files the compassionate release. And he had convinced enough judges, convinced enough people that this was a viable means of getting not only me, but thousands of others back into court, getting our sentence reviewed. Well, this whole time, that other motion that had been filed was kind of like buried in the courts, it was still there. And the court, for whatever reason, didn't simply dismiss it, which, okay, never, ever happens again, which is why this situation, getting the phone call, is just so out of the blue because nothing's supposed to be open. What Sean explained to me was that for some reason, the court, even though I was granted release, even though my term of supervision is done, my case is closed, supposedly everything's done, the court left open this appeal on that segment regarding the legality of those stacked 924Cs. And the court had recently told the government a few months ago, you need to respond to this argument, which makes no sense. Again, this is why I'm feeling red flags are going off everywhere. I'm like, this doesn't make it. Why? Why would the court do that? And I got to be honest, right now, we still don't know exactly why this would happen. So Sean's explained to me, he goes, I don't know why he told the government to respond, the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney responds. He was like, and I've been getting notices from the court that I didn't pay any attention to, telling me I need to reply. He's like, your case is closed. Like, why? He said, I figured it was a mistake. He goes, until the court clerk called me this morning and said, hey, you need to file a reply here. So I'm like, Sean, I was like, make this make sense to me. He's like, they cannot take you back to prison. Your case is closed. I'm like, so why would they do this? He goes, the only reason I can think of and why the U.S. attorney would even respond to this is that maybe he's trying to clear the way for you to get a pardon in the future by dismissing some of the original counts that you were convicted of. I'm like, so wait a minute. They're going to go back 24 years later and say, okay, you were right. You were never supposed to be charged with these. And now they are going to grant a motion in the court dismissing those counts.
Could it?
What the hell?
But could it also be set a precedent for people who have stacked 924Cs if they want to change the law now?
Yes. And which is also baffling. Why would the government ever support that? You heard all of these legal arguments over the years that the government appeals like there is no light. There is like the Department of Justice issues guidance and they say, if a defendant is arguing this way, you oppose it this way. If a judge grants something, you oppose it this way. It's never, ever guidance on, yes, you go along with the defendant. You agree that they're supposed to get relief. It doesn't matter what it is. It's deny, 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 deny. So why would they do this?
Maybe because you're out already and doing well versus if it's somebody on the inside. It doesn't make complete sense. It makes more sense in my head than it's coming out, but
it doesn't even make sense in this regard. Like, it's baffling. It is absolutely baffling. And which is all the more reason, even though this is why Sean could not give me a satisfactory answer as to why this was happening. Nothing that made sense to either one of us.
I'm like an emotional roller coaster as you're talking because I'm like, it's fine. And then as you
And
talk,
then it's not.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Which is why it's probably still not sitting well with me either, right? And that's where the anxiety comes from. And it's like, okay, is there a trick here somewhere? Like somehow are they trying to reopen it? Because that was my concern. I was like, if they dismiss counts, does that allow them to reopen my conviction?
Does
there a way
it?
No.
Because the judge vacated your sentence, so therefore it's there
done.
was no 200. Okay, makes it feel a little better.
It's dead at this point. But since I can't make sense of it, it still sits.
I get
I
it.
still sit uneasy. It's given me anxiety these last couple days because I cannot explain it. And that's manifested itself in a couple different ways, right? Uh,
Elaborate.
elaborate. So we hung up that call, and although I decided we did not need to pack our bags and and hop the next flight out of here, it's still like it left me physically ill for the rest of the day, feeling very, very uneasy. And it brought me back, gave me thoughts of the person that always comes to mind, right? When it's situations like this is Chad. And we've had Chad on the show, Chad Marks. Man, Chad is doing incredible right now. Two beautiful little boys. He's got twins, living this amazing life, helping others get out of prison. But Chad had that freedom snatched away from him. And we've told this story. He was literally walking out the door of the prison. He had been granted immediate relief, gets all the way to the door. His family, they see him. They're like, yes. And they stopped him. They said, nope. The court granted an appeal. You got to come back in. Like, oh God, I can't even imagine, right? So it's situations like that, and there are plenty of others that we've seen, experienced. We know the people, we know the stories where it leaves you feeling uneasy even when you're totally in the right. Even when we have no reason to be concerned about anything, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake it because of that story.
We've just seen corruption and too many games played by too many people in power. From our shoes, where our hands were cuffed, for lack of a better phrase, but you're just stuck and your life is in their hands.
And I guess that kind of takes us to some of the other things that have happened that cause, because I'm sure people are wondering, well, that doesn't seem rational. Why, if you're not doing anything, why would you be concerned? Well, let me tell you some more of those stories. There is good reason. And I'll start with the first one. Was my parole officer, we'll call her parole officer, United States probation officer. I was sentenced to, I had that 3 years probation to serve once we got out here. And since we were living a certain way, I was so transparent, right? I'm like, listen, I'm going to let her know everything that I'm doing. Like, basically allow her, like, send her pictures, allow her to be a part of our life so that she knows, like, this is the time I'm on, this is what I'm doing. And I knew that I needed to do those things to establish a level of credibility, of trust. And ultimately I was, going back into prisons to help others. And I needed all the support I could get to be allowed to do that. And over time, obviously we built that relationship up. But when I made a decision to kind of branch off on my own and start doing things independent of why we came out here, working with that organization, we had some very real concerns. I had people tell me, man, watch it. This dude's coming for you, meaning like he'll do whatever he needs to do to get you out of the way. And knowing that he had people sent back to prison, I know this for a fact. That didn't make me feel very good. So I addressed that head on and said, listen, these are my concerns. I'm worried somebody's going to call and make something up, say that, you know what I mean, whether directly I'm involved in something or I'm a part. Like, I didn't know what the scenario was. I said, but I want to let you know preemptively, these are my concerns. I'm going to continue to live completely as transparent as possible, let you know everything that I'm doing so that you have no questions about the veracity of my statements. And I don't know, if anything was ever said or done in that regard, but it left us feeling really uneasy.
Yeah.
Because there were some phone calls from prominent people who I'm not yet going to put them all the way out there. But they called to warn me, to warn us, and said point blank, like, he's coming. And these people are in, it's interesting because they're in a position of authority where you wonder, like, okay, why would you not intervene and do something about this if you know it's nefarious? Which heightens our concerns. Like, if these people are willing to go along with it, like, what are we going to do? So we're saying all this, explaining all this to kind of give you, the rationale why, when this phone call came from Sean, why we were so, like, I was so quick to jump to that next conclusion. Whereas when I came out of prison, I didn't feel that way. This was over time. So that was the first one. The second one was with the split with my former business partner, where I'm pretty sure that there was a call there. And I was getting calls from attorneys. I was getting threats from all sorts of other related parties, where it's like, man, there are people like trying to do us harm. So again, that was the second reason for us to have those concerns. And then finally, when it felt like we were finally getting a little bit of separation, a little bit of distance, I felt like I could breathe. We take off and we go to Italy, right? Something we had been so looking forward to, your sister's wedding, all of your family, an amazing, amazing experience. And it was absolutely incredible. And as we were coming back, I believe it was in Europe, wherever we were coming through in Amsterdam, where you go through Interpol and there's checks on your passports before we made it to the other airport. Whatever it was, when we went through, I got a strange feeling, and I had no reason for it. I'm like, there was unnecessary attention there.
Yeah, I remember you saying it, and I'm the anxious one, way more anxious than you. I was like, no, I just think maybe he just was like a young kid, had a little bit of power, and was trying to intimidate you. I didn't see it. And that's crazy that you saw it and you felt it.
Saw it, felt it, made that statement to you, and then kind of put it aside because they let us go through, right? So we come into Atlanta, and I'm like, oh, we're home. We're home. Like, for me, that was the first time out of the country. So coming back into the country really felt like coming home. It's kind of hard to explain. And I don't know. I don't know if other people feel the same way when you're out of the country and you come back.
Especially when you don't speak the language.
Yeah. Yep. And it felt like, we're home. We're back on U.S. soil. So we fly into Atlanta. It's a Sunday afternoon. So thank God the airport, like especially international travel, is pretty dead. We come in, since we have CJ, we're like the last ones through, and we're taking our time. We're lugging all of our stuff, right? And we get in the line to go through the checks. And we were last or second to last. And it wasn't that many, so it was no big deal. We wait, and we do have another flight to catch. We're in no hurry. We got time. We come through, we get to the counter, and they're like, I could tell right then there was an issue when he looked at my passport, set mine aside, checked both of yours, and he's like, you're going to have to come with me. And my heart sunk. I'm like,
I still didn't, it still didn't faze me at that point, because I just thought that he goes, oh, they just have to ask you a couple questions. Yeah. Now, when we used to go into prison visit, they said it was random. They said it was by number sometime. I don't know. I've heard different things.
Right.
But certain people would get drug tested. Not everybody would get drug tested. For some reason, I was always the one. I was always the lucky winner of getting drug tested.
Imagine
no big deal.
that.
I had nothing to hide. I'm like, God, can you just hurry up so I can see him faster? You know, one of those. And that's just what I thought. I thought it was your unlucky day. I thought it was like your number that got called and you were just going to have to go answer a couple questions. It did not even anywhere in my realm, which is crazy based off of everything we have been. And maybe it was, like you were saying, maybe it was like, oh, we're home, we're back on our soil, and it just didn't dawn on me.
And I think at that point, we were starting to feel a little bit more comfortable again.
But you said you're like, something's up. It hit me when you handed me the passports.
Yeah, I immediately at that point when he said you're gonna have to come with us, I'm in go mode at this point. And it's not like flight mode because there's nowhere to run, right?
No, we thought you were going to jail.
I definitely thought I was going to jail. So I immediately went into okay, go mode. Like, we need the passports. What do you need? You're gonna be going on with him. I'm going to jail. This is what's happening. What do I need to set in motion? I still have my phone. I immediately call Sean. I get Sean. Thank God, thank God Sean has always been there, right? And again, this is why whenever he calls, I immediately answer the phone. Doesn't matter what I'm doing because he picked up on a Sunday afternoon. Thank God.
But my favorite part of the story is he just was in friend mode that day, and he was like, "Ba-da-da-da-da," and wasn't the customs cop like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like, oh, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, hey, yeah, we're coming back through customs. And yes, I just got flagged. We have a problem here. I'm going to need your help. And he was like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, no, you shouldn't be flagged. I was like, listen, whatever's happening right now. And I immediately, my mind goes to someone has said something, done something, made a claim against us. Who knows? Something out of spite to get us flagged, to get me locked up, to get me back in prison. That's all I'm thinking, right? It's no concern over anything that we've done because we live like so straight. So I'm not concerned about that, but I know that, listen, this is what's about to happen, and it sucks. And my concern is for you and CJ first and foremost, making sure that the two of you are safe. So I'm telling Sean, here's what's happening. I flip up. I start texting my PO at the time, actually my original PO, saying, hey, I need my discharge papers because I'm done. I'm off of paper. There is no supervision.
And you had been for a couple months at that point.
Yep. And they're telling me by the time we get to the desk that I have a detainer. It's an open detainer. You're on parole, something you didn't have permission to go, and I'm like, whoa. No. And the customs guy, thank God it's a Sunday afternoon and there's really nobody else around. So we have his complete attention, and he can hear Sean on the phone. He's like, is that an attorney? He's like he doesn't even want this recorded on the phone. He's like, is that an attorney? I was like, yes, this is my attorney. He's like, you don't need that. I was like, no. I've been through this before. I definitely need an attorney, right? There's no way you're getting me off the phone with him. So I was like, yeah, he's going to remain on the phone with us for the duration of this conversation. And I believe that was also influential in getting us through and getting that resolved the way that it was. There were a number of factors because I was being detained that day. I was not getting on that flight. You and CJ were going ahead, and he basically said, okay, listen, I do have some discretion here. I am going to allow you to go on, but you need to get this resolved. He was like, because what this says is that I'm supposed to hold you. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and to think that that's like some harmless mistake.
Well, yeah.
Or error? No.
Right. And
absolutely not.
No. And I wasn't even there for any of that because I remember I said to the guy, I'm like, can I go to the ladies' room? He's like, yeah, I ran off because I thought I was going to be sick. Mm-hmm. That's how much it brings us back.
Yeah. And that illness. So obviously we made it through that day.
Right.
We made it back. But explaining all of this to set the stage for this call that comes out of the blue earlier this week, and why it left me after that call, even once it was supposedly resolved, Sean said, listen, there's no chance of them reopening the case. You can't go back to prison. You don't have to worry about any of those things. He was like, I'm sorry, I should have opened with that. I was like, yes, please, next time. Open with that.
Hopefully there's no next time.
But I mean, at this point, like, who knows?
That's what
it's too many things to think that this is ever just going to be behind us, a distant memory. I don't think that's ever going to happen. And for the rest of that day, I felt physically ill. There was pain in my chest, and not like heartache, like my heart felt heavy, physically heavy. And for the rest of the day, I kept trying to shake it. And I thought that by going to the gym, we'd be able to kind of shake it off. But something strange happened. While we were working out, we were on the assault bikes. And that was one of the things for that last year, that really, really stressful year, the beginning of COVID, when we were confined to the housing units. We did workouts that were written together. I would share those, and they generally revolved around the assault bike because we had an assault bike on the unit, on the housing unit, that I could get to. Like the doors would pop after count, and I'd break and head over there, and they'd be like, "Oh, this maniac's on the assault bike again."
Like nobody wants to go on the assault bike except for the two of us.
So I'd hop on it, and I'd have this workout written in it, and I'd do this killer workout to excise all of this stress, this anxiety that I'm feeling, to physically exhaust myself, and then be like, okay, I feel good. And I'd share that with you, and you do the same workout. So we're doing these same workouts together, which was cool. And here we are in the gym on the assault bikes together. And for the first time in the over 3.5 years now that I've been home, I was on that bike and I was visualizing myself in prison. That's never happened before. Like I was picturing myself in prison on the bike, eyes closed, visualizing what my life was going to be like outside of prison, and knowing that I just had to push as hard as I possibly could to somehow just convey the strength of my will that this was going to happen.
That's crazy. We've never ever spoken about that before. Ever. I have chills right now because that's exactly how I would get through my workouts, and that's exactly why I would push so hard. Sometimes I would even visualize you at the end, like at the end of the track.
Oh, man.
But that's crazy because it was like the physical manifestation of the emotions that you were feeling, and you just had to push and push and push. And like we always say, if you could do it physically, then your mind will follow.
Absolutely. So the physical has always been an outlet for that emotion, but it's also been a means of building the mental fortitude, being able to push that hard, go through those crazy workouts is like afterwards, after you suffer through that self-induced suffering, like, hey, listen, you can't break me.
Yep.
You can't break me. And when those situations come up, being stopped at customs at the airport, you don't break down. You go into go mode. It's like, okay, how do we deal with this situation? What do we got to do? It was the same thing that happened with Sean. I didn't collapse and say, oh my God, what are we going to do? No, it was, where's the suitcase? We got to pack. It's time to go. Like, that's just it. So it's a different response to stress. But while I was on that bike, visualizing going through that whole thing and realizing the loop that I was in, visualizing myself in prison, visualizing myself in the future.
That's crazy.
Knowing that I'm on the bike out here in the future with you right next to me, the emotion almost came out.
Yeah.
In a primal yell. And I think you've heard me at times. There are times when I've been like, where workouts like out in the park, outside, where I've kind of let part of that out. But what I shared with you afterwards was like, it was this close. It was about to creep out. And I'm not sure how they would have responded at Lifetime with me letting something like that out. Like we already have people's attention there, right?
Well, at least it's not Planet Fitness. We wouldn't have gotten kicked out for grunting. But when you told me that last night before you told me the second part, I thought you meant like you almost vomited because that's how hard the workout was. I didn't realize that's what you almost let out.
No, I almost let that out. And it kind of frightened me. It was like, whoa, like that almost crept out, like beyond my control. And I had to pull it back in. Where when I first got out, initially when we got out here and I was running every morning, I'd be out on the bike path and there's houses along the bike path, right? But there's traffic on 215, so there's some noise. There were plenty of mornings, and it was pretty consistent for a while, where I would let out these primal yells during my run. And I can only imagine what the people in these homes, these poor people, like I'd hate to wake up to that, be like, oh my God, like go look out the window. Like what the hell is out there? Part of that initially, I can vividly recall, was just overwhelmed with emotion. It was a release. And it felt like so much that had been stored up over the years, it just needed to get out. And it wasn't all negative. It was cathartic. Fast forward a little bit when some of these other things started taking a turn and there was some negative energy in our lives. And it felt like people were trying to pull us down, and they actually were. There were some mornings where I was out there and it did have a different emotion behind it. There was anger. And I needed to get that out. For me, that was a healthy expulsion of that energy. That coupled with the gym, with the heavy bag in the garage, things like that are what I need. Or needed at that time. And I felt like we had kind of worked through that. And almost recently, there's part of me that was kind of searching and saying, man, did I let all of that go? And do I need part of that to keep me driven, to keep me on edge, pushing as hard as I feel like I need to push to get us to where we want to be? And I had to really assess that. And I'm like, am I okay with not being driven by that much, that intensity of emotion that it feels like it needs to come out? And then suddenly there it was again on the bike, and it almost escaped in lifetime. So the reality is it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there. Maybe it was a little bit more contained. I'm still not quite sure. Even talking through it for this episode has been useful, but I'm not sure where I'm at with it yet. I'm still feeling uneasy. And as we've talked through this, I don't feel like there has really been closure to that situation. And I'm not quite certain how to get that closure, how to feel like we're safe.
So when he filed that, when the U.S. attorney filed his response, is that what had to happen? He had to file a response?
He did.
And did you get to hear what that response was?
Yes, he agreed that they should be vacated.
Okay. And then Sean's response? Same?
Sean's response was a single line basically saying, we agree with the United States Attorney's Office that those counts should also be vacated. And Sean made it a point to tell me, he goes, that is the first and only time I have ever filed a statement that says, I agree wholeheartedly with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Well, yeah, they hooked us up in not only this instance, but in your whole entire court hearing to get out.
Yes.
But my thought is, like, if that happens, well, that did happen. So then what? It's just a matter of time before they...
I guess the court's going to file an order vacating those sentences. Now, for all practical purposes, right? The legal argument that I spent years and years like refining, and yes, I won. I won it. I still would have ended up with a mandatory minimum of 375, 5, 80 years, because there still would have been 4 gun charges, or maybe 3. Either way, it would have been a sentence that I still couldn't live
It would have
through.
been life, yeah.
It was still a life sentence. And that's just, it shows the injustice of that statute by original design. Like, it was never intended to be applied that way.
My thought is that I think once we hear back from the court that it's vacated, I think that it'll be easier to sleep at night. I don't think it'll be, anything that feels like it's still hanging over our heads. And my gut is,
Maybe.
and I'm hoping, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm hoping that that has something to do with helping people who are still on the inside, something with like the second step or something like that.
Good question. And maybe in a couple days, maybe next week, when we've had a little bit more separation from that initial call and I can talk to Sean a little bit more about it, we'll sit down and give this more thought on how it might be helpful to others. I mean, because that's something that I would feel really good about. Like, wow, okay, finally, finally there's more people getting relief from this. Because there are literally thousands of individuals who are still serving crazy sentences like the one I had, that although no one else can be sentenced like that, those people are still stuck. They cannot get relief, even though everyone acknowledges that it's an injustice, a grave injustice. So knowing those aspects of the court system, our intimate knowledge of how things work, like you do have reason to be suspicious, right?
Sure.
Like justice does not always prevail, often does not prevail. So
to circle back to what we said earlier, the Carrie Bradshaw moment, do you think it'll ever go away? Like, do you think we'll be 95 and still looking this good, but concerned about
I like that.
concerned about something like this happening?
Good question. Good question. I don't know. Like my faith in the system is, I don't know if I will ever have faith in our system, in our government, after all of the things that we have experienced. And as a result, it's living within that reality.
Yeah. Like, I think that I feel significantly more at ease since you've been off of paper. I think it was
Yes.
way worse then because it always felt like it was being dangled, it being your freedom. But I agree with you. I don't think it'll ever go away. And I think it's because of what we've experienced and knowing how corrupt it is. Because prior to me being involved with you and what I've seen, just through having a YouTube channel and seeing comments on not only my YouTube channel, but other people's YouTube channels that talk about this kind of stuff, is that the public is very misinformed. And I believe a lot of it is well, I don't think so. I think it's just that they just don't know. I was going to say to help them sleep at night, but I think genuinely they just don't know. And they have full faith in the powers that be. And it's not the case. There's a lot of corruption in the powers that we've experienced.
I think most people, not everyone, allow themselves to be deluded into accepting a certain reality or a certain narrative that supports how they want to view reality because it's easier.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's comfortable, right?
We don't have time. We can go all the way down the rabbit hole with just like media,
Yes.
but we're not going to go there. But yes, I understand what you're saying.
And yeah, that's just the unfortunate reality. But as we've seen, those people who are personally touched and impacted, their view of the system tends to change pretty dramatically.
Of course.
So, including, I mean, my own family, my parents who, at the start of this were firm believers in the justice system and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, like these truth tellers, and the experience has caused them to revisit that and look at individuals, to realize that our system is comprised of individuals on both sides, and that makes it very fallible. So anyways, so that was our flashback, or number of flashbacks, that caused us to have a pretty emotional week. That I think, I'm happy it's Friday, that this week is over.
Let's get some sushi.
I'm down with that. I am definitely down with some sushi, Friday night sushi, and celebrate the end of another great week. and focus on looking forward to all of the great things that we have in front of us and not get caught in those flashbacks and not allow, you know, the anxiety, the fear to keep us from living into the life that we've dreamed of, that we know that we deserve, that we worked so hard, spent so many sessions on that assault bike.
Well, and I think it paid off, right? Because we, like you said earlier, we will never go into that victim mode. We will always go into protective, proactive, let's go mode.
That's it. And that is like, we did that by design.
Mm-hmm.
We built ourselves up to be ready for whatever situation arises. So, and that's our hope for all of you, for everyone who tunes in and is interested in becoming grittier and you want more gritability in your own life. Like, that's the lesson, man. Challenge yourself, keep pushing so that when life does hit you, smack you in the face,
Which
like,
it will, because it does to all of us.
absolutely. Like, you know how to respond. You've got a plan, right? Plan doesn't just go out the window. You go into go mode. So, and that's what we want for you. Because if you're going to have the life of your dreams, you've got to be ready for anything. Man, it's been another great episode. We appreciate y'all for joining in. We'll see you back here on the next episode. Bye-bye.